Hi, today I want to talk specifically to parents, guardians, and loved ones of students who are about to go off to college. I want to touch on a few things that I think are good tips that I have learned over the years from not only being a parent myself, but from listening to other professionals, psychologists, family therapists, talk about this transition and some tips to make it as smooth as possible. Whether this is your first or your fourth child, first or your last, going away to college, the departure always comes with a variety of emotions for you as the parent, guardian, and loved one, and also for the student. And as you probably can imagine, for students especially, there is a wide range from one end of the spectrum being completely excited and cannot wait, wish they could go tomorrow, to I'm a little scared, maybe a lot scared, not sure what this is going to actually feel like for me when I'm there. And wherever they fall within that spectrum, it's where we need to meet them as parents and other trusted adults who are trying to help them navigate this process. Some things that might happen if this is your first time sending someone away, things to be on the lookout for. They are oftentimes looking to sort of test their new limits of freedom. They know it's going to be a very different kind of freedom coming when they get to college campuses in the fall, but they are also already starting to think about that. They've graduated from high school. For most of them, that means they are 18 years old. And now this summer, some of them may really try to push and pull at what have been the boundaries and the structure that has been imposed on them throughout high school, meaning things like curfews and other things that you can imagine depending on what happens in your home related to that. That is not uncommon, and as parents, we just have to deal with those stretching of the limits and really impose what we expect to continue until the time that they do go away to school. I think another thing that I see happen far too often is there can be conflict, and it is not fun. And as a parent myself, I was like, I don't want to fight with you right now. We only have X number of days or weeks left, those kinds of things. But the basis of that often is they are, even subconsciously, usually subconsciously, thinking this will be an easier breakup if I am mad, or if people are mad at me. So sometimes that's where that tension bubbles up. Again, subconsciously, but those things can happen. And it's true in all kinds of relationships. But in this particular scenario, it is pretty common to have arguments with your child, loved one, before they go away. So keep that in mind. Try to keep it in perspective. Try to de-escalate. And again, remember as best you can that a lot of their actions are coming out of some level of fear. Even for the ones who are on the one end of the spectrum about being so excited to leave, there probably is still some level of fear. The other important tip that I have, so important that I actually wrote things down so I won't forget to mention them. But one of the things that one of the psychologists who used to come and do a program for us when I still worked in schools often talked about to the parents of our seniors was this idea of before they even go, before drop-off, well before drop-off, this summer, have a conversation about your expectations. What do you as a parent expect from them in the coming year? And it may modify over time as they're gone longer. That's perfectly fine. But for the start, even if you do it for the first semester, what are your expectations? So things that you should talk about. One is the difficult conversation about sex, drugs, and alcohol, and what you want them to know about how to protect themselves and how to be safe. And parents, adults, please, even if you think you have done this and this conversation has been covered, it is always worth revisiting because things are different a lot of times on college campuses. They may find themselves in situations with new people without their support group that they're used to. So just have a conversation about ways that they might navigate certain situations, any tips that you can provide to them about, ways to get out of situations if they are uncomfortable, even if that is a particular phone call or text to you that has a code word, so to speak, so that you know that you need to try to help them in that situation. I'm not trying to be a fear monger, but I do think it's just important that we are talking to teenagers about these realities of life. And if you have never done so, now is really an important time to do it. The other thing is establishing maybe your own expectations about safe driving. Again, none of us want to think that our students' children are going to find themselves in this kind of situation, but if they don't have a safe ride home, what would you like them to do? In our case, we set up an Uber account that is no questions asked. If my son needs to use it, if his friends needs to use it, that's what we decided we wanted to do, because that just helped us all feel more comfortable about what might happen while he's away at college. A couple of other things. Talk about other aspects of campus safety. They will hear a lot of this from orientation and things like that, but just reiterate the idea of not walking alone at night, finding your friends and a trusted group that as soon as you can, so that you know that you have people looking out for you and things like that, so that some of them are just not aware. They hear stories, they hear things that happen out there in the world. And like most young people, nobody ever thinks anything's going to happen to them. And certainly we don't want that to happen to our children, so we like to not think that either. But let's just be on the safe side and have conversations about it so that they think through some scenarios that they may not have ever found themselves in before. A couple of other things, a little more lighthearted. Let's talk to them about what you expect in terms of communication. For me, it was, I'd like to hear from you once a week. Let's have a once a week check-in so I know how you're doing, proof of life kind of situation, those things. Some students are already naturally reach out more often to their parents, and that's fine too. But for me and my son, we had to talk about it. What does that look like for us? And once a week has worked well in terms of all that. And of course, then we just text and have other check-ins when we need to, but just establishing something early on really kind of helped pave the way for us in terms of that. I think it's also important that you talk about what are the expectations in terms of coming home. Depending on how far away they are, obviously that there are maybe already some limitations in place because of travel and things like that. But if not, you may want to just talk to them about, do you expect them to come home once every semester? Is it just on the breaks? Do you need to put up a boundary and say you cannot come home X number of times? It all obviously depends on your family dynamic and all of the things that have to factor in. But it is important that I think there's some level of expectation around that. And some of that may have to evolve. You may have to see they are off at school and you're trying to determine what to do because they want to come home a lot or something like that, or they don't want to come home at all. And so you may have to have conversations around it that evolve over the course of time. But I do think just having a general sense of that can be helpful for everybody's expectations, if nothing else. And then expectations regarding grades. I know for me, sending my son to college was a bit of a relief. It felt like there was less of the interaction all the time at home around homework and things like that because he's managing it on his own now. But if you have certain expectations about how they perform or what they do academically, then have some of those conversations now so that you are not trying to backpedal and figure it out, rectifying a situation down the road. And then, be sure that you offer support and you let them know that you all as loved ones are there for them, and, they do have someone to reach out to if things get rocky, and they probably will get rocky. And that's something as parents I need everybody to breathe in and breathe out about. It is not uncommon for there to be phone calls of, sadness, homesickness, even if they don't state outright that that's what's going on. It can happen. I'll never forget the time it happened to me. The phone call was about 2:00 in the morning. I panicked because I thought something was terribly wrong, but we just needed to connect and talk through a couple of things. And it's hard then because I think as parents, we then hang up and go, oh boy. And for me, I, worried about it, made me sad, fretted about it. And on the other end of the phone, I think he got the connection he needed and was smiling and, probably off to sleep soon after. So, It can be a lot when you get those calls, but just know that they may come, but always remind your child that that's normal. Being lonely, sad, homesick, especially in the beginning, is not uncommon, and it takes time. And I think our students are used to the friendships they've had in high school. Some are dying to reinvent themselves and leave that behind, while others are really going to miss those lifelong connections that many of them have had. And you don't reestablish lifelong friendships overnight. So just remind them of those kinds of things. Everybody is different. Every student will experience this somewhat differently, and parents, guardians, and loved ones, we will all experience it differently as well. I go through weeks now. My son is entering into his third year of school, and I am still at times sad and frustrated that he's far away and that he's not here, but many other days are filled with happiness because I know he's happy. And so you will get there too, even when you do miss them. I hope that it's a great experience for all of them and for you. And if there's anything we can offer in terms of support for this transition or connecting you to other people who might be able to offer that support, please reach out.